My name is Lena. I'm 28 years old, and I fix elevators for a living. For the past 3 years, I've been working in a 40-story office building in Chicago, taking care of 8 elevators. It's boring work. Swap out parts, grease the rails, check the wiring.
Most of the time, the elevators are silent. The cables move quietly in the shafts, the doors open and close, carrying the exhaustion and secrets of this city. My mother emigrated from Poland. She spent her whole life sewing clothes in a factory.
Lena nauczy się zrobić robi mięsne. To czy nie będą chcieli spieć?
So I became an electrician, and ended up the only female repair mechanic in this entire building. I checked the cables, the controller, the brake system. Everything looked fine. But when I crouched down in front of the control panel, I spotted a piece I didn't recognize, tucked behind the main board. It was grayish-black, about the size of my palm, held in place with electrical tape, with wires jury-ringed into the emergency call system. I pulled it off. It was a recording module. On the memory chip, someone had scribbled in tiny handwriting, "Don't delete." The letters were crooked, like they'd been written with the left hand. I pressed play. The first recording was dated 2 years back. It was a woman's voice, young, trembling, like the last leaf hanging on a tree in late autumn. The second recording, 1 month later.
He's back. He followed me to the elevator. We just stood there. 20-second turn.
Still no answer. Third, fourth, fifth, 3 years, over 100 distress calls, all from the same woman. I pulled it off. It was a recording module. On the memory chip, someone had scribbled in tiny handwriting, "Don't delete." The letters were crooked, like they'd been written with the left hand. I pressed play. The first recording was dated 2 years back. It was a woman's voice, young, trembling, like the last leaf hanging on a tree in late autumn. I closed the panel, leaned against the wall and thought. I thought about what my mother said. They won't mess with you. I thought about the women riding elevators alone late at night, trying to get home. I checked the cables, the controller, the brake system. Everything looked fine. But when I crouched down in front of the control panel, I spotted a piece I didn't recognize, tucked behind the main board. It was grayish-black, about the size of my palm, held in place with electrical tape, with wires jury-ringed into the emergency call system. I thought about that voice on the recordings, getting more and more tired, more and more calm in a way that broke your heart. She'd stopped hoping anyone would ever answer. I didn't call the police, because to call the police you need evidence, and the recordings I had were illegally
obtained.
I needed more. I pulled the elevator maintenance logs from the last 3 years. The old logbooks were piled in the corner of the machine room, covered in dust. I flipped through them page by page, leaving gray fingerprints on the paper. Every breakdown was logged with a date and time. I matched the timestamps on the recordings to the breakdown logs and saw that the calls for help always came after 10 o'clock at night. By then, the only people left in the building were the late workers and the cleaning crew. Half the hallway lights were off, and the elevator lobbies were empty. I started staying late after 10, officially for routine maintenance, but really I was waiting. The 4th week, she appeared. I sat in the corner of the 3rd floor elevator lobby, pretending to inspect the fire hose cabinet. The metal cabinet was cold and uncomfortable to lean against. The 4th week, she appeared. The next day, I pretended to smoke by the employee entrance and watched her swipe her card to get in. Her name tag said, Emily Chen, 26, Marketing. I went back to the machine room, opened the recording module, and pulled up the most recent calls.
He was standing outside my office again today. I was afraid to go out. I left through the back door and took a long way around.
He followed me for 3 blocks. I only lost him when I ran into the subway station. I stood on the platform for a long time, let 3 trains go by before I dared to get on.
I called the police. They said he hadn't done anything violent, so they couldn't take a report. Ma'am, come back when he hits you.
Her voice went from desperate to calm, and that calm was scarier than crying. It meant she'd stopped expecting anyone to ever answer. You get calm because you get used to it, and you get used to it because no one helps. I backed up the recordings to my phone, then called my sister, Maria. She's a social worker. She's seen a lot of cases like this. Maria, if someone were stalking you, what would you do?
Hide, move, change jobs, disappear.
What if it's your boss?
Then it's even harder. Complaining about him is the same as quitting. The boss won't believe you, and your colleagues will say you're being dramatic.
I hung up. I was going to help her, but not the usual way. The usual way, she'd been trying that for 3 years. It hadn't worked. I pulled all the elevator surveillance footage from the times Emily had called for help. The system only kept the last 3 months of video. I spent the whole night watching. The chair in the security room was hard, and the blue glow from the screens burned my eyes. Found him, a man in a dark suit, mid-40s, medium build, hair neatly combed. He always showed up around 10 p.m. near Emily's floor. The elevator footage showed him getting into the same car as Emily, standing behind her, not speaking, but his eyes fixed on the back of her head. Sometimes he stood to her left, sometimes to her right, but never in front of her. He didn't want her to see him. Look in his eyes on that surveillance footage. It wasn't affection. It was possession. It was the way a hunter watches its prey from the shadows. Quiet, but full of control. I started tracking his routine. He arrived at work at 8 a.m., parked his black Mercedes in B2, spot 17. He never ate with coworkers, always alone. Every Wednesday and stay at noon, he went to the gym. Every Friday night to the same bar. His life ran like a Swiss watch, and he used that precision to schedule his stalking. I followed him, not in the criminal sense, just observing. I needed to know his weakness. Everyone has one. His weakness was that he thought he'd never get caught. That confidence. I was going to shatter it. I sat on the steps in the B2 parking lot, looking at his car. Black. Spotless. He sat in his car for a long time, not getting out. I don't know what he was thinking. Maybe about how he'd bump into Emily tomorrow. I didn't care. I just needed to know he was still in the building. Found Emily. That night at 10, I was waiting in the B2 parking lot, crouched down, watching for her. The parking garage was huge, lit by harsh white fluorescent tubes. She came walking fast toward her car, her fingers trembling slightly on her key fob. Her car was a white Honda with an old scratch on the bumper. It took her 3 tries to get the door open. Emily Chen? She flinched, stepped back, and bumped into her car door.
Who are you?
I'm the elevator mechanic. I heard your The color drained from her face.
What recordings?
The ones you made on the emergency call system. 3 years. Over 100 calls. Nobody ever answered, but I heard them. Her eyes welled up, and her lips started to tremble.
How did you hear those?
She wrapped her arms around herself and shrank back a little. The emergency call system in the elevator had a recording device on it. Some mechanic installed it secretly. I don't know who he was, but he kept every single distress call. She bit her lip and was silent for a long time. A car drove through the garage, its headlights sweeping across her face. I'm used to it by now. The police don't help, the company doesn't care. I know. That's why I'm not going to the police. What are you going to do then? Make him admit it himself. She looked at me with a mix of emotions. Doubt, fear, and a tiny sliver of hope, like a drowning person seeing a piece of driftwood, afraid to grab it, because it might be a mirage.
Who is he?
Richard Hayes, Director of Marketing. She lowered her head and gave a small shiver, as if a cold wind had blown through her.
I knew it was him.
You're not surprised? No. He's always looked at me that way. That look. You can't see it, but I can feel it. Like something crawling on my skin. I took her hand. It was cold. We're going to help you. I told Emily my plan. No police, no legal process. I was going to make Richard break down on his own. She asked me how.
The elevator.
I took the recording module out and brought it home. I rent a small apartment and with his tools and parts. I spent my living room has been cluttered with tools and parts. I spent 3 nights editing that 2-minute recording. Over 100 distress calls, each only a few words long. I spliced them into 3 sentences. Who are you stalking? The first time, a question. The second, an accusation. The third, almost a whisper, like someone breathing the words right into his ear. I embedded that recording into the elevator's floor announcement system. The principle wasn't complicated. There were 8 elevators, but I only needed to modify the voice chip on the one Richard used most. That was the B-wing elevator, the one he took every day from B2 to the lobby. Every time the elevator reached a floor, the system would first announce the floor number, then randomly play, "Who are you stalking?" Random, not every time. Sometimes once a week, sometimes 3 times in a day. That way, he could never tell if it was a glitch or if someone was targeting him. Uncertainty, that's where fear comes from. The day after I installed the chip, Richard heard the phrase for the first time. On the surveillance footage, he got into the elevator on B2 and pressed the button for the lobby. The doors closed, and the elevator ran for about 15 seconds. When it reached the lobby, the voice announced first floor. Then, a 1-second pause.
Who are you stalking?
He snapped his head up and looked around. The elevator was empty, except for him. The elevator was empty, except for him. The doors opened, but he didn't step out. He stood there, held the door open button, and leaned out to look down the hallway. Nobody there. He stepped out, walking fast. The tails of his suit jacket flapping. The tails of his suit jacket flapping. I saw his face on the monitor. That was the look of a hunter who just realized he's being hunted too. Not anger, but fear. Ersieden jon ichian zai semen yu lung. I smiled. The first week, Richard heard it only once. He complained to building management that the elevator's voice system was malfunctioning. Management sent another mechanic to check it out. Not me. Then the mechanic tested it over a dozen times and heard nothing. The repair report said, "No abnormalities found." The second week, he heard it 3 times. He started getting paranoid. Before every elevator ride, he'd stick his head in to see if anyone was inside. One time, he pressed the door close button, then open, then close again, over and over. The doors opened and closed, like his heartbeat. Dennis, the security guard, came to see me in the machine room.
Lena, what's up with that elevator?
Not sure. Maybe the wiring's getting old.
Well, check it out, will you?
I did. There's nothing wrong.
That's weird. Richard complains every day. Says he hears a woman's voice.
I picked up my coffee and took a sip. Maybe he's just tired. Hallucinations. Dennis shrugged and left. He bought it. He always bought everything.
Who are you stalking?
The third week, when Richard heard "Who are you stalking, stalking" in the elevator, he swore out loud. I could see his lips moving on the monitor. It must have been a loud one. He stormed out of the elevator, bumped into a female coworker, and didn't apologize. His suit was wrinkled, his tie ashwar. I started observing the changes in his behavior. He stopped working late. He left by 9 p.m. He stopped using the underground parking garage and started leaving through the first-floor lobby. He started taking long detours to avoid walking past Emily's desk. It wasn't Emily he was afraid of. It was the voice in the elevator. He didn't know where the voice came from, who was speaking, or how it knew he was stalking Emily. The unknown is scarier than anything you can name.
Lena, he's been acting really strange lately. It's like he's afraid of something.
Emily called me. The elevator. The elevator? Yeah. You'll see soon enough. The fourth week, Richard started taking the stairs. 40 floors, twice a day. His suit was soaked with sweat, his tie wet and sticking to his shirt. When coworkers asked what was wrong, he said, "The elevator's too stuffy."
The elevator's too stuffy.
But everyone knew that climbing 40 floors wasn't something a normal person did. People started whispering behind his back, saying he must be under a lot of stress. Nobody knew the truth. I started to feel that fear alone wasn't enough. He needed to be pushed to the edge of breaking. I increased the frequency, from every third ride to every other ride. One day, he just stepped into the elevator, the doors still open. "Who are you stalking?" He bolted out of the elevator, nearly fell, caught himself on the wall, and stood there gasping. On the monitor, his face was white as paper. Dennis came to find me.
Lena, Richard filed a complaint. He says there's a woman's voice in the elevator, and he's being harassed. A woman's voice?
That doesn't sound like a glitch.
I don't know. Just check it out.
I went to check it out, and, of course, I found nothing wrong. I gave the report to Dennis, and he passed it on to Richard. When Richard saw the report, his face looked like he'd seen a ghost. He flipped through it over and over, then set it down on the desk and covered his face with his hands. I stood in the security room and watched his shoulders shake. Emily started fighting back. She stopped avoiding Richard. Instead, she started accidentally running into him in the hallways. One day, coffee in hand, she just happened to turn the corner right as he was coming the other way. "Richard, are you okay? You look pale." She called me. "Lena, I realized something. Now he's the one dodging me. He used to stalk me. Now I'm stalking him. Keep it up."
Let him know someone's watching him. I started hanging around near Richard's office. Not on purpose, just while I was in the neighborhood. I'm an elevator mechanic. I have a legit reason to be on any floor.
Richard, is the elevator working better now?
He didn't know if I was asking about the elevator or about him.
His answer was always, I take the stairs.
One day, he finally stopped me in the hallway. He stood in front of me, hands in his pockets, voice low.
Lena, did you mess with the elevator's voice system?
No, why?
Do you know something?
Know what? I tilted my head and looked at him like he was lost. He stared into my eyes, trying to find an answer there. I didn't look away. I held his gaze. Richard, why are you asking? He hesitated, then turned and walked away. His leather shoes clicked urgently on the tiles. I knew his defenses were cracking. The 5th week, Richard started coming in late and leaving early. His productivity dropped, and his team's performance suffered. Someone from HR mentioned privately that he might be getting demoted. Emily told me he hadn't been coming near her desk lately. He was even taking detours to avoid walking through the marketing department. Her voice on the phone sounded much lighter than before. Lena, it's like he's hiding from everyone. I said, he's hiding from himself. I decided to turn up the heat. I found one of Richard's habits. Every day at 3 p.m., he went to the coffee machine at the end of the hallway. That spot had no cameras. It was a blind spot. I planted an old phone there, looping the phrase, "Who are you stalking?" Richard heard it when he went to get his coffee. He stopped in his tracks and spun around, looking everywhere. He looked down, saw the pot, pulled out the phone, and turned it off. But the sound kept playing. Because my phone was connected to a small Bluetooth speaker hidden in the ceiling vent. He unplugged the coffee machine. He shut off the phone, but the voice was still there. He panicked, not knowing where it was coming from. He hurried back to his office without his coffee. That afternoon, he took leave and went home early. I watched his figure leave on the security monitor. His shoulders slumped, like a beaten dog. The 6th week, Richard didn't come to work. HR said he'd called in sick. Emily texted me he quit. I said, I don't know, but soon. While he was out, I went to his office. I pretended to check the air conditioning ducts, but really I wanted to see his desk. There was an open notebook on his desk, filled with tiny, dense handwriting. Who's talking in the elevator? Who is it? Stalking? Am I going crazy? He must have been up all night, night after night. I took photos with my phone and sent them to Emily. She wrote back, he's about to break. Yeah, we need to wait. Wait until he walks into a police station himself. But psychologically, under sustained, unexplainable psychological pressure, People can do all sorts of extreme things. I needed to make sure that his extreme behavior was confessing his crime, not hurting someone else. I adjusted my strategy, lower the frequency, give him time to reflect, instead of keeping him in constant fear. Too much fear makes you run. Just the right amount makes you face yourself. I played the recording only once every 2 days. After each time, he'd stand in the elevator in silence for a long time. On the monitor, his head was bowed, like he was confessing. The 7th week, Richard's condition got worse. He'd lost a lot of weight, and his clothes hung on him like an empty shell. His hair was a mess, and he hadn't shaved properly. Cow workers said they'd seen him talking to himself alone in the conference room. People in marketing started whispering that he was losing his mind. Who are you stalking? On the screen, he knelt on the elevator floor, hands braced against the ground, shoulders shaking violently.
I was wrong. I shouldn't have stalked her. Please, stop. I was wrong.
Watching that, I felt complicated. Not satisfaction. Sadness. It takes pushing a person this far before they'll admit what they did. Not because he grew a conscience, but because he got scared. But being scared is still better than continuing to hurt people. I contacted Emily. The time is right. Go to the police tomorrow morning. Charge him with what? Stalking. I'll give you the evidence. That night at home, I organized all the surveillance snapshots and audio backups and saved them onto a USB ride. The drive was tiny, the size of a fingernail, but it held 3 years of guilt and fear. I set the drive on the table and looked at it for a long time. Then I went to sleep. And I slept well. The next morning, Emily went to the police station. She filed a report saying she'd been stalked for 3 years by her boss, Richard Hayes. She handed over the surveillance screenshots, the audio timeline, and her own diaries. She'd been collecting that evidence for a long time, but she'd never dared to bring it forward. Not because she was afraid, because she didn't believe it would do any good. But now she believed. The police took the case. That afternoon, the security guard went to the office to look for Richard. He wasn't there. He'd already left early. People at the office said he got a phone call, then packed up quickly and left.
I knew you'd come. Where are you?
At home.
The police went to his house.
He lived in that big, suburban house, with its perfectly manicured front lawn. He was sitting on the living room couch, an open Bible next to him. He wasn't praying, it was just sitting there. His voice was calm, like he was talking about someone else.
That woman in the elevator. She kept asking me, "Who are you stalking?" I couldn't take it anymore. I admit it. I stalked Emily Chan for 3 years.
The security took him away. When he walked out of the house, the neighbors saw and started whispering. His wife stood in the doorway. She didn't come out to see him off. The 2 kids were nowhere to be seen.
Lena, he turned himself in. The police took him.
I know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
She cried. On the other end of the line, her sobs were quiet, but I heard them clearly. News spread through the whole building. Richard Hayes, director of marketing, was taken away for harassing an employee. Co-workers whispered in the break room. He didn't seem like that type. No wonder he's been acting strange lately. And some didn't say anything at all, just stared into their coffee. Maybe they were wondering if they'd missed something too. Emily didn't come to work. She was resting at home. HR called and said the company would handle it appropriately. She didn't know what appropriately meant. She didn't need to know.
Lena, have they found out about you?
Not yet, but soon. The elevator's voice system, they'll figure it out eventually.
Are you scared?
Yeah, but also no, I did the right thing.
Will you get fired?
Probably.
Do you regret it?
No. There was a long silence. Then she said,
You're the bravest person I've ever met.
It's not bravery. It's stubbornness. She laughed. That was the first time she'd laughed. After Richard was arrested, the Suspars searched his computer and phone. They found photos of Emily. Hundreds of them, all taken without her knowledge. From her desk at work to the door of her apartment. From grocery shopping to drinking coffee. From walking down the street to sitting on a park bench. The photos spanned 3 years, like a silent movie. They also found a daily log of her movements, down to the minute, marked in different colors. Red meant dangerous. Green meant safe. That the item he cared about was already the danger itself. The prosecutor told me the evidence was enough to convict. Richard was facing up to 5 years in prison. I was called to the police station to give a statement. A young female officer asked me, "How did you find out she was being stalked?" "I'm a mechanic. I saw his suspicious behavior on the elevator surveillance." I didn't mention the recording device. I didn't want the police to know about that device. It would get me into trouble. I'd protected Emily, but I couldn't protect myself. The company started investigating.
They inspected the elevator's voice system and found the tampered chip.
Dennis, the security guard, immediately thought of me. He called me into the security roof and closed the door.
Lena, was that you?
What?
That phrase in the elevator. You put it there.
Yes.
Do you know what that is?
Making a criminal admit his crime.
No. It's illegally tampering with public equipment.
I looked him in the eyes. He didn't look away. He wasn't a bad person. He was just following the rules. But sometimes the rules are wrong. The company decided to fire me. The reason? Vandalizing company equipment and psychological distress to an employee. HR gave me a termination letter and asked me to sign it. I read the letter and laughed. "You're firing me?" "Yes." "Richard harassed a female employee for 3 years, and you did nothing. I made him confess, and you're firing me?" I knew what was coming next. The same words, the same excuse. "It's the company's decision. I don't have the authority to change it." I picked up the pen and signed it. "I'm not going to sue you."
Why?
"Because I don't need to. Your consciences will do the suing for me." I packed my things and left the building. Standing outside the entrance, the sun was blinding. I got fired.
I knew it. Do you regret it?
No,
What will you do now?
I don't know, but I think I can do more. I swung my tool bag over my shoulder and headed for the subway. Inside the bag was that old notebook, with Richard's daily schedule and surveillance screenshots. I was thinking that's next I was going to teach what I'd learned to more people. The first week after losing my job, I rested at home. Maria came to see me. She brought a bottle of red wine and a bag of oranges. She sat on my couch, cross-legged.
Lena, you know a lot of women have heard about what you did.
Who told them? Emily posted about it on social media. She said, "An elevator mechanic helped me catch my stalker using the elevator." The post got shared tens of thousands of times. A lot of people commented saying they'd been stalked too, but didn't know who to ask for help. I looked at my phone screen, scrolling through the comments. One said, "My coworker stalks me too, and the police won't do anything." Another said, "I'm afraid to go home alone after work." Another said, "Please help us." Another said, "That mechanic is a hero." I'm not a hero. I just listened. I put the phone down and looked out the window. Maria, I want to start an organization.
What kind of organization?